started. Okay, my Friday night movie recommendation this week is from 1963. It's a mad, 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 mad world. Okay, I am guessing that you haven't seen this movie, and it's definitely one you should see. Okay, let's talk about 1963 first of all, and then we'll get back to Stanley Kramer and his crazy idea for this film. 1963, the U.S. adopted a 5-digit zip code. They even had a little mascot called Mr. Zip that if you grew up, when I grew up, you saw Mr. Zip. He was reminding everybody to use the zip code. Alcatraz closed its doors as a prison that year. It was the first time that a liver transplant had been performed. Captain Crunch and cassette tapes were introduced to the market. And Surfing USA by the Beach Boys was the #1 single of the year on the Billboard Top 100. Now, while Lawrence of Arabia won for Best Picture at the Oscars, To Kill a Mockingbird took home a bunch of Oscars as well. Let's segue over into movies now. So this is 1963, and Stanley Kramer, who was really known for doing more heavy dramas like Judgment, Nuremberg, and after this movie, he would end up doing Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. But the 60s was a troublesome time for the movie theaters because television was becoming so prevalent. So movie theaters were trying to figure out a way to woo the audiences back to the theaters. You know, this was the age of the epic films. But Stanley Kramer got this wonderful idea. He wanted to do a comedy, so he did a chase comedy. And the basic premise is this: old gangster gets into a car accident, and as he's dying at the side of the road with all these other people who just happen to be driving by at the next time trying to help him out, he tells them all of the loot that's been buried on the other side of the country. And after he passes away, they all agreed to drive there together and share it amongst themselves. Well, it's not long before greed starts getting the better, and they all start turning on each other as they now race to get to the other side of the country to find this the spot where he has secluded the cache. What makes this movie truly spectacular is that Stanley Kramer, who knew the industry pretty well, went out and got every comedian he could, every talent, anyone who did anything in movies, on the vaudeville circuit, that was doing the summer shows up in the Catskills. He got all those comedians to be in this film. If they weren't primary stars, okay. Here are some of the primary stars. We got Spencer Tracy, Milton Berle, Sid Caesar, Buddy Hackett, Ethel Merman, Mickey Rooney, Dick Shawn, Phil Silvers, Terry Thomas, Jonathan Winters. He looks really young in this film. Eddie Adams, Dorothy Provine. Okay, and then you have the more the people who are doing just cameos with credits. We're talking Jimmy Durante. He's the old prisoner who kicks it at the side of the road. Buster Keaton, Don Knotts, Madeline Rue, Carl Reiner, and then there are all these uncredited people in the film that are faces people recognize that would go on to be either they were big or they had been big, or there were going to be uncredited scenes by Jerry Lee Lewis, Bobo Lewis, no relationships to Jerry Lewis, but Tom Kennedy. Towards the end of the movie, there's a scene with firemen. 3 of the firemen are the Three Stooges. Anybody who was anybody in the comedy world at that point in time was in this movie. It was worth going to it just to see if you could recognize all the faces and who was playing who. There was some of the things, like the scene with Don Knotts on the telephone, got edited down, so there's a lot less of it. Some people ended up being edited out altogether. Some people died shortly before the film and couldn't be included. And you won't see Lowell and Hardy in this because one of them died shortly before, and the other one said, I'm just not going to do any screen time without my partner, so he's not in there. But, oh my God, everybody else was. Everybody except for, and this was an oversight apparently, Don Rickles. And for the rest of his life, if Stanley Kramer was in a room, Don Rickles would roast the hell out of him for not having him in the movie. So say things, yeah, you lost my number, you know, things like that. Oh, so he got his revenge on Stanley Kramer for that. But this film, it really did well in the box office. It was a critical success. It was the third highest grossing film of that year and went on to do pretty well. Now, I'm really familiar with this film. I watched it, I've seen it multiple times, but in doing some research before doing this podcast, I realized the last TV showing was in 1979. So all of you guys, unless, to me, it was one of those films that seemed to be always on television. I was watching it all the time. I know every scene of this film. But unless you've rented it, and I'm thinking about renting again here. Here's why. Because it was done in Panoscope. It was the Cinerama. It's a big widescreen format. And when I saw it on television, we're talking the square format. So I'm thinking, I'm going to watch it again. And I'm going to watch it in the letterbox format. And I'm going to look for the edition that has all the original footage in it because it got edited down significantly over the years for the U.S. release. There's sort of like Kramer's version that was released and then got trimmed down by about 20 minutes. So I want to see the full version. Now, I don't know which version it is that's currently playing on Canopy. That's Canopy with a K. And you can watch it for free there. Canopy is your library service. All you need is a library card and the zip code, and you can watch films, TV shows, what have you. They're not endorsing me, but I'm certainly endorsing them. I watch Canopy all the time. And it's great if you're one of those people who've decided that you need to, do a budget cut and trim back on paying for your streaming service. There's a lot of good stuff on Canopy, and It's a Mad, 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 Mad World is one of them. Make it your Friday night viewing.